Hello, puppets of the world. I am a member of a secret society whom you may know by the name of Illuminati, and yes, we do run the world behind the scenes. For reasons which I shall not be discussing here, I have decided to tell the world the truth about how the New World Order plans to nuke North Korea after framing Kim Jong-un for a massive military strike, and then colonizing that nation in order to steal its resources. Keep watching if you dare to learn the details of this NWO plot. Finally, a member of Illuminati tells all. Russia actually developed the nuclear bombs which North Korea has at its current disposal. While this fact is contrary to the popular notion that North Korea developed such weapons on their own from civilian-grade nuclear material given to them during the Clinton administration. This is the truth. The Russians have a silent trade agreement with North Korea which they would like to not let that fact out too loudly to the rest of the world. And this is why the Russians developed the nuclear program for North Korea, which is run in DPRK facilities and staffed by North Korean scientists who learned their trades from Russian scientists. In fact, that is the reason why the North Korean nuclear bombs do not fit into the North Korean missile systems. North Korea obtained their intermediate-range ballistic missiles from Chinese generals and arms dealers. This happened because the corrupt leadership of the Chinese military is using the DPRK as an arms trading proxy to the rest of the nation-states around the globe. Typically Middle Eastern dictatorships are the buyers of the Chinese weapons via North Korean brokerage. The relationship between the DPRK and the Chinese military arms dealers has been the reason why North Korea has been able to obtain the evolution in missile technology which they now boast. In other words, the renegade Chinese generals helped the North Koreans develop and in some cases just flat out sold missile technology to the DPRK and as partial payment for North Korea agreeing to act as a proxy in international Chinese arms deals. The fact that DPRK's nuclear devices and the missile technology have come from two different countries is why they are not able to fit a missile with their nuclear bombs. The American people have been brainwashed by the mainstream establishment media to increasingly live in fear that North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un will nuke the US at any given moment. The truth is that the DPRK is not able to fit their nuclear devices into their missile delivery systems, which are not genuine ICBM systems anyway. More importantly, the US military has already developed and deployed a new missile shield defense system which is fully capable of intercepting and shooting down any North Korean missile attack aimed at the United States. Interestingly, the mainstream establishment media has chosen to ignore the existence of the missile shield and has chosen a policy to fearmonger the all-so-simple American people. This is because the NWO controls the mainstream media and wants the US to believe that North Korea is an immediate threat. Nothing could be further from the case. In fact, North Korea does not want war with the United States. Kim Jong-un's government has asked for peace between the DPRK and the United States, but the US government has sternly replied that no such peace will be given, and that hostilities will continue. Thus, North Korea only seeks to develop its nuclear weapons program out of a policy of self-defense. The true reason behind why the U.S. government insists on a hostile stance against a strategically peaceful North Korea has to do with a desire of the New World Order to colonize the North in a manner similar to how Afghanistan and Iraq have been invaded and exploited for commercial gain. In fact, the Secretary of State Rex Tillerson is the former head of the energy giant Exxon Mobil, and he is well aware of the fact that North Korea is one of the richest areas on Earth in terms of rare earth minerals and metals. Thus, Tillerson plans to start a war against North Korea on the false claims of global security, when in reality, The NWO social elites, of which Rex Tillerson is a party, are planning to attack North Korea so as to mine the resources out of the North. Rex Tillerson has already convinced President Trump that war against North Korea is a good idea for both of them. But Tillerson still has the task of convincing Russia and China to go along with the war against North Korea. Rex Tillerson has received the Medal of Friendship from Russia, and he is good friends with Russian leaders such as Vladimir Putin. In secret, Putin and Secretary of State Rex Tillerson worked out a deal which entails that if the U.S. coalition does not invade and colonize Syria, and does not overthrow Syrian President Bashar Assad, then Russia will tentatively go along with the Trump administration's plan of attacking and colonizing North Korea. Of course, Russia's elites such as Putin would have to gain premium mining rights, shipments, and investments in ExxonMobil's exploitation of North Korea's resources in order for the Kremlin to green light the deal with Tillerson. Rex Tillerson is also working hard to gain approval for a war from the Chinese government. That being said, he may have more success in that objective than one may at first assume. The New World Order-controlled mainstream media has led the American people and the international community to wrongly believe that North Korea is nothing more than a puppet vassal state to China. However, this is untrue. The DPRK has viewed China as a greater enemy to them than the United States ever since China and the U.S. became trade partners decades ago. Likewise, China has become increasingly unhappy with the Kim Jong-un regime's refusal to allow China to modernize North Korea's mining and industrial transportation sectors. The DPRK has viewed such offers of modernization as a subversive backdoor colonization on the part of China. In fact, certain DPRK elites were too warm with China have been executed during the Kim Jong-un regime. Kim Jong-un has not even so much as met with the president of China in order to normalize relations with their two countries following the death of Kim Jong-il. Contrary to popular opinion which exists even inside the U.S. State Department, Kim Jong-un is not truly running the North. In fact, Un is merely a puppet-like figurehead, and he is being controlled by menacing DPRK generals who make the real decisions and are constantly at play against each other in a never-ending standoff coups, assassinations, and conspiratorial power struggles. Falsely, Kim Jong-un is being used by the DPRK upper brass to give the illusion of the stable governance which has not existed ever since the death of his father, Kim Jong-il. The stability issue inside North Korea worries Chinese leadership, but the Chinese Politburo is much more displeased with the fact that the DPRK forces the North Korean people to industrial gulag-like mining conditions which are brutal and very slow when it comes to extracting the resources which China needs to buy for its own people. Furthermore, the DPRK primarily survives by exporting coal and copper to China. But the government of China wants to finally be able to import the rare earth minerals and precious metals which is in the North Korean mountain ranges. The DPRK would need to modernize their mining industry in order to begin extracting the much desired rare earth minerals and precious metals. However, the DPRK is unable to modernize their own mining industry, and they are too fearful of China to let that nation modernize the North Korean mining industry on their behalf. The government of China would be happy to replace the current regime of Kim Jong-un with another leadership which would be more Chinese-friendly. However, the Chinese military is not confident in their ability to defeat North Korea's sophisticated mountain tunnel defense system. Likewise, the Chinese government does not want to deal with the refugee crisis which would result from a Chinese invasion of North Korea. China has up until just recently been resolved to endure their unhappy relationship or lack thereof with the current North Korean government. Nonetheless, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson has been engaging in very intensive secret negotiations with China in order to get them on board for a joint Chinese-Russo-American war of conquest against North Korea. The Chinese are currently lukewarm on the conquest plans, but at this stage of the game, they have agreed to assist the United States conquer North Korea. A significant talking point which Rex Tillerson was able to bring up with the Chinese leadership while selling his colonization of North Korea plan to them has been the point that the tech manufacturing giant Foxconn is based in China, and the exploitation of North Korea's underground resources would be of great benefit to the profitable expansion of Foxconn's operations in China. Now that I have given a synopsis explaining why the New World Order is planning to wage a war of conquest against North Korea, I will not explain the military strategy which is intended to use during the destruction of the North. President Trump seeks to antagonize Kim Jong-un into making the first strike by agitating him with a war of words. The overall assumption regarding Kim Jong-un's personality is that he is bent on destruction and is insane. However, this is not true, and he does not want a war with the U.S. coalition. Therefore, Trump's original plan of antagonizing the DPRK into striking first is likely to succeed. The Trump administration has decided on a backup plan in which they intend to frame Kim Jong-un's regime by staging a false flag attack and then promptly blaming the attack on North Korea. In fact, what the brainwashed masses don't know is that the Trump administration was behind the assassination of Kim Jong-nam, who happened to be Kim Jong-un's brother. The probable circumstances of death are obviously a frame-up against Kim Jong-un, but the NWO-owned establishment mainstream media was easily able to convince the public that Nam was assassinated by Kim Jong-un. Kim Jong-nam was regularly in contact with the DPRK, was known to write to Kim Jong-un and received a living allowance from the North Korean State Department, money which he would pick up by walking into the DPRK embassies. On top of all that, Nam was open about his refusal to take part in any overthrow against his brother Kim Jong-un, and said firmly that he wanted nothing to do with politics in North Korea. The idea that Kim Jong-un's regime would choose to assassinate Nam in an airport with a VX nerve agent is laughable. The DPRK could have gotten Nam out of the way in much more low-key and discreet ways than using banned chemical weapons on him in a major airport for the whole world to see and condemn. Beyond those points, Nam had been living out in the open and had not been in hiding for several years after Kim Jong-un took the position of president of North Korea anyway. Most conveniently, Kim Jong-nam is assassinated with a banned VX nerve agent once President Trump was beginning his rhetoric to the media about how North Korea needs to get rid of their weapons of mass destruction or else. Despite these obvious parlor tricks, the NWO has managed to deceive the masses. The New World Order further successfully insults the intelligence of the sheep-like masses by releasing a fake audio recording of ISIS leader al-Baghdadi, which proclaims that the government of North Korea and ISIS are allies and that both organizations will now unleash a reign of terror upon America. The content of the fake Baghdadi audio release is absurd and pathetic, but the public believe it at face value. ISIS is a strict extremist version of Salafist Islam, and they would find it to be against their religion to praise or proclaim an alliance with a regime which proclaims Kim Jong-un and his father and grandfather as gods. The NWO's awkward attempt at creating a fictional alliance between North Korea's government and ISIS is a clear continuation of George W. Bush's axis of evil speech, which pathetically claimed that an alliance between Iraq, Iran, and North Korea was the true culprit of sponsoring the September 11, 2001 attacks. In reality, the New World Order was behind the 9/11 attacks, which were an inside job, perpetrated by the Bush administration at the behest of the Saudi royal house, which happens to be the secret head of the New World Order. The New World Order now plans to frame the DPRK by detonating a hydrogen bomb in the Pacific Ocean and launching mock-ups of North Korean intermediate-range missiles at Japan or U.S. territory on the Pacific. The false flag attacks carried out by the Trump administration is intended to terrify the American public and international community to the point that they will support any military action against North Korea, no matter how inhumane such actions may be. President Trump will order a surprise nuclear strike against North Korea. Trump will send B-1 and B-2 heavy stealth bombers against North Korea. On top of that, among the many payloads in the air war against North Korea will be the newly developed B-61-12 nuclear gravity bombs, and these will be used in combat for the first time in history. The B-61-12 nuclear gravity bombs were developed in a very predetermined manner with their use against North Korea in mind. The U.S. military learned that even conventional bunker busters were having trouble penetrating some of Saddam's German-built advanced bunkers. And they know that the DPRK even has much stronger mountainous strongholds which cannot be penetrated by non-nuclear bunker busters. The U.S. military invented and readied the B-61-12s with the North Korean mountainous bunkers and deep tunnel systems specifically in mind. The B-61-12 nuclear gravity bombs are designed to deliver a much smaller nuclear payload than has been possible in times past, and the fallout is greatly diminished. Which means that there will theoretically be much less radio activity sitting around after some time goes by from the period time that the blasts take place. Also, these bombs can be dialed to calibrate blast power according to the needs of each air raid, which works well for the diverse and confusing underground defense systems which exist in North Korea. A nuclear missile strike would have the potential to inadvertently trigger a nuclear retaliation from China and Russia. Most conveniently, the B-61-12 nuclear gravity bomb can be delivered by aircraft which will merely appear to be a warplane carrying a conventional payload, and due to the fact that the B-61-12 nuclear gravity bombs can be set to only detonate after penetrating into the Earth, which is expected to mitigate the unwanted possibility of Russian or Chinese nuclear retaliation. The MOAB is also going to be heavily used against North Korea. It is not a coincidence that a MOAB was detonated in combat for the first time in Afghanistan somewhat recently. The MOAB was not the most appropriate device to use against the State Department-branded ISIS militants. For example, more established bombs could have destroyed the militants holed up in the tunnel network in question. But the U.S. military leaders wanted to combat test the MOAB at least once before using it wholesale during the predetermined war against North Korea, which has been decided upon well in advance of what you are seeing on the news today regarding the Kim Jong-un regime. The use of the MOAB and the much more powerful many nukes, that being the B-61-12 nuclear gravity bombs, are the U.S. military's best thought-out answer for crippling North Korea's defensive systems before they are able to fight back in any significant way. After that, China is expected to play their part and send in security forces to secure the area, as difficult as that would of course still be to do. The newly invented F-35 stealth fighter bombers will be used in combat for the first time in history when the war of conquest starts against North Korea. Although the role of these new warplanes will in fact be somewhat limited in the upcoming air war, the performance of the F-35 will be overly applauded during the negotiations for arms sales of the F-35 to nation-states wishing to buy warplanes. Nation-states would normally have cold feet to buy a controversial, overpriced and untested warplane such as the F-35. -35, but after the air war against North Korea, nation-states will be clamoring to buy them, which in turn would reap vast profits for the Saudi-controlled NATO military-industrial complex. A war with North Korea will entail certain destructive outcomes which cannot be avoided. First off, there is the issue of South Korea being badly damaged by North Korean bombardment. Secondly, there is the North Korean refugee crisis which Manchuria would have to absorb. The New World Order has worked out how to turn these two expected tragedies into a sinister benefit for themselves. The large family-controlled South Korean corporations known as chaebols have elites within them which expect that many of their current bankruptcy cases and pyramid Ponzi schemes will be made null. Through emergency war time stimulus packages which will be issued in the wake of the destruction of many South Korean cities after North Korea counterstrikes. On that note, shadowy elites in the South Korean chaebols, along with partners of theirs in Japan and the United States, are hoping that the devastation of the war between the U.S. coalition and North Korea will allow them to carry out many complex corporate coups and restructure the old South Korean corporate chaebols in a way which is less family-controlled and much more multi-national, which of course is an outcome which the New World Order seeks all the time. President Trump is a real estate magnate, and has already planned out how his corporate empire will rebuild the cities of South Korea in a manner which will greatly profit himself and his cohorts. In regards to the North Korean refugee crisis which is expected to swamp Chinese Manchuria, the government leadership of China has decided that those unfortunate souls will be used as de facto slaves in sweat shops in order to break up the fledgling unions in China. Furthermore, Foxconn has already agreed to take in many of the expected refugees by building and housing them in new manufacturing cities, where those people will be allowed to enter if they have previous skills with working with earth and metal. However, once they are allowed to enter these new manufacturing cities, they will not be allowed to leave, and will effectively be worked as slaves. Sadly, the New World Order plans to further their agenda by carrying out all of these agendas. I hope that I have been informative and helpful in opening the eyes of some of the few open-minded sheep of this world. Thanks for watching, and please remember, we are always looking out for you.